Hi again, everybody. In the last lecture, I urged you to do some research about your family vacation destinations so you'd have some idea of where to get great photographs. In this lecture, I'd like to go into a little bit more depth on that subject and give you an inside look at how I prepare professionally to do the best photo story I can. It all starts with research. My photo stories, my coverages for National Geographic magazine, are made or broken in the research phase, literally. They're literally only as good as the research is. For every day I spend in the field shooting, I bet I spend at least a full day researching a story at home. Let's take koalas, for example. That's a recent thing I had in National Geographic. I had 3 weeks to be with koalas in Australia. I spent 3 weeks in the research phase. See how it matches up? What does that mean exactly? Spending 3 weeks shooting, 3 weeks researching ahead of time. It means that I start finding out everything I can about koalas before I go there. Where do they live? What are their habits? If they're nocturnal, I need to know that. That's huge, because it's going to determine how much I'll need to think about lighting things at night, right? Also, what's the conservation status of these animals? Are they in trouble? Do people care for them at home? Where do they go when they are in trouble? Well, as it turns out, they really are in trouble. The entire northern population is now threatened with extinction. So as I went through, you know what? I looked and looked, and I just tried to find funny things. A guy that's with his dog, wearing a koala costume, a lady that's taking care of a koala at home as if it were a baby. The trouble koalas get in is right here. The only place for the koalas in this part of Australia are in the trees on the fairway of a golf course. That's how tough it is for them in some places. And they end up stranded in trees and neighborhoods. So these are all the things that I wanted to try to work and really try to tell the story of koalas well. Went to a koala hospital where they worked on healing koalas to release them back into the wild. Very moving and touching. They're so cute, they're so cute. And went to the world's largest koala, of course, down by Melbourne, which was really interesting. Notice the spotlight up there. Looks familiar. Anyway, I had a really interesting time shooting koalas, but it all came from the research. That was key. Also, this lady, Megan Aitken, I found an expert on the ground, and I learned from her when to be there, where to go. I just hung out with her. I lived with her. I emailed both the Australia Wildlife Hospital and Megan, and I found that between the two, my story was covered. Both were intimately involved with trying to save injured koalas and try to save the species. They're there in the trenches on a day-to-day basis. They were both extremely helpful in keeping me filled in on what was going on, what the picture possibilities were, best time to come to Australia to get good images to tell the story, save the koala. But I bet you I had 500 emails between the two of them. 500 or so. That's a lot of work, but that's what it takes to get pictures like that. A lot of work, a lot of preparation. If I don't do my homework like that, I just won't get on the plane and go. I have to feel good about it before I ever leave. My biggest fear? Getting skunked. Showing up at a place to hear somebody say, oh, you should have been here yesterday, or last week, or last month, or last year. In all my time with Geographic, I've tried to really do my homework and not get skunked, but I have gotten skunked a time or two. Both times, it was because I wasn't researching heavily enough or because I didn't make follow-up calls when it became closer to the time of the trip. One time, for example, I was covering a story on brown bears. The only place where you can drive and watch brown bears in North America is a place called Hyder, Alaska. Trip was all lined up, but I didn't call the locals up there the week before I left, and it turns out the week before I got there, a bear had killed somebody, and authorities had closed down all the bear viewing. In fact, they pepper sprayed the remaining bears to get them out of there, to make the place safe. There were no bears when I got there, which was a huge problem. You can't shoot what isn't there. You cannot publish excuses if you're the editors of National Geographic. And there's no way to tell the bears I work for that National Geographic wants them to have their picture taken. They just don't care. The bears don't subscribe. So they're not going to come back to have their picture taken if they've been hazed away. So I was out of luck. There's no happy ending to the story, by the way. I have no pictures to show you from that. I had to turn around, get on the plane with my tail between my legs, go home, skunked. So we really try not to let that happen. We can't be successful professionally as photographers for National Geographic. So how do we go about researching really? Well, the internet is a great tool these days. It used to take me weeks or months of going to the library and mailing off for brochures about various places and then working the phone to ask follow-up questions. These days, a lot of times, tell you the truth, take the shortcut. I just go online. I can research things pretty well in a very short amount of time. Email is a real miracle. It really is quite amazing. When I want to correspond with people, I find out what it is that I can do. Now, email's the worst way to actually communicate and find that stuff out. Email's the worst. Phone calls second. Face-to-face is the best. I actually like Skype, things like Skype, because I can actually see who I'm talking to. I talk to a lot of people, and Skype or other programs like that allow me to really read them. You know, most communication is nonverbal. I want to see their faces as I'm talking and making requests of going in and getting special access, for example. Can I get access to the top of a building to make pictures near a freeway? Or can I hang out with you as you go into a restricted part of the woods to study nesting rare birds? You know, I really like Skype better than the phone or email because I can see people, read their body language, see whether they're receptive. Maybe they're not so happy that I'm coming to visit. Sometimes, you know, they say, yeah, Joel, that's great. Come on by. That's great. That's great. But, you know, if they're shaking their head, no. That's really important to know, and you can't tell that over the phone or email, really. When I'm researching something, I want to be with people who want me to be there. That's the great thing about working for National Geographic. I don't want to be with people that are belligerent or irritated or bothered. Life is too short, and it's not really my job to irritate people, although my wife would tell you differently. Believe it or not, I want to go somewhere where I'm wanted. And there are tons of places where people are excited to have a photographer paying attention to them, whether it's National Geographic or somebody else. So I say this, as long as you promise to share your pictures with people, or at least offer them to have a good experience if they've allowed you into their lives, you'll be golden. That's a big thing. I've said it before, but when you're conversing with somebody and you're able to see them face to face during the research phase, just smile. A smile shows that you're happy and you're not going to be a problem. People like that. Let's talk about one thing that took a lot of research and prep. Whale hunting in Alaska. I was doing a story on Alaska's North Slope. First of all, I had to spend weeks on the phone mostly because the internet was just budding out then, trying to talk to native people. I talked to people with the International Whaling Commission, trying to find a village that was very successful in their whale hunting each year. I knew that I wanted to get a picture of a whale from above as it was being cut up, but I couldn't live in those villages for a year. We didn't have the budget for it. So I had to, and my wife wouldn't tolerate that, obviously, or my kids either. So I had to find out which village has permission to hunt whales, which village would be the most receptive to me being there, and which village gets their allotment of whales the fastest and in the most predictable manner. Those are weird questions to ask on the phone, but that's what you do. That way I wanted to target my visit, so I'd be there at the right time. So I learned at this place. It's called Kaktovik, Alaska. It's a little village on the edge of the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge. By law, they're allowed to hunt 3 bowhead whales for food each year. They usually get them in a week right around Labor Day. This village had everything I needed, basically. There's a little window of time, a small window of time, and a place where the folks would allow me to be there, so it all came together there. Next, I needed to get permission to be there, right? Butchering whales is a delicate subject to people, so I met with the whaling captains, the captains of the whaling crews there, and with the mayor of the town. As I recall, I told them all, I was doing the piece for National Geographic, which is true. What I wanted to do was fly a small camera blimp, about 18 feet long, on a tether over one of the whales when they beached it, in order to take a photo looking straight down as it was being butchered. I paid a fee to the Alaska Whaling Commission, and I think I might have paid an honorarium to some of the people of the town. I promised prints, and I delivered those prints to the whaling captains who participated in the hunt, and I was given permission. Now, we could have done the same picture with a lift truck or a bucket truck, but I wasn't allowed to use the town's bucket truck. So, in comes the blimp, and along with it, Kenji Yamaguchi, who's one of the people that works at photo engineering at the Geographic. I had to arrange for helium tanks to be flown in too. I had to get the camera blimp up there and up in the air. So Kenji shows up, he knows how to inflate the blimp, he knows how to run it, he helps run the cameras, he knows about all this stuff. I don't, I'm not using it very often. And when the hunters brought their first whale in, we lifted this blimp up. There's the camera, it lifts about 6.5 or 7 pounds, and eventually got our pictures. There it goes. Hired another young man. I said, do not let go of the tether. If you let go of the tether, this is the only one of these in North America, and we are done. And we had a lot of money invested. Anyway, there's your picture. It's a little bit different perspective. Bird's eye view looking straight down. This ran as a 2-page picture in the magazine, and I liked how it looked. It was pretty much exactly how I'd envisioned. I wish the whale had been even more giant but for size comparison, but you can really see what it's like there. You know it's a whale, you know it's a very unique picture, and notice that I'm not commenting about what I think about whale hunting. My job as a journalist for National Geographic is to show the readers of the magazine and let them decide. I'm showing them the world, and they can decide what they think about whale hunting. But That was a lot of work, but it did run big in the magazine, so mission accomplished. I want to show you another couple pictures because from that same place, I knew through my research that if I went up there at that time, I would not only get a picture of a whale, but I'd get pictures of polar bears feeding on what was left of the whales. I knew that if I hung around long enough, the bears show up just like clockwork around Labor Day, right? I'd never even seen a polar bear before, but I was very excited. I knew through research I was going to get a twofer, whale picture and polar bears. Both would fit right into our coverage of the North Slope of Alaska. And so one polar bear even made the cover, believe it or not. But this took a long time. There he is, the jaws of a bowhead whale, tremendously big. And there he made the cover. How about that? That doesn't happen very often. And of course, one beat on the door trying to get in and eat us when our van wouldn't start, but that's another story. Goes with the job. But that was pretty exciting, and it all came from doing my homework. I knew from my research that I'd be welcome there, that I could fly my camera blimp. I had a place to stay, I could get meals. They would provide transportation for a fee. I knew that we could get polar bears if we could stick around for a bit after the hunt, about a week afterwards. It worked out perfectly. But the only reason it did work out perfectly was because I'd done my homework. At least 100 phone calls, maybe more. I mean, a lot of time goes into these stories, obviously a lot of time. And then there's weeks on the road, so you really have to want it. You really want to be type A if you work for National Geographic. Let's look at another one closer to home. A little festival, probably my favorite festival of all time. Of course, it's from Nebraska. This came from a story I was researching on Nebraska for National Geographic. They were kind enough to let me work in my home state. I wanted to photograph small town festivals, and I hit this one in the research phase, and I thought, holy cow, the Wayne Chicken Show. I'm going to hit all 3 days of this thing. This is epic. So these are the Chickendale dancers. They're not quite as fit as the Chippendales, but they drink more, and that probably explains it. So this festival, 3 days, it's all things chicken and eggs. Folks there have a great time. I knew the dancers would be there. And you know what? They make for good pictures. So here we are in the big parade. It's a chicken theme, of course. Guy in a chicken suit is the Grand Marshal. And then when you get there, there's a lot of room for serendipity or things to just happen. There are plenty of chances for happy accidents. They have a chicken flying contest even. Can you believe that? This is where a guy literally pushes a chicken out of a mailbox with a plunger to see how far it'll go. Favorite chicken contest? Or this is the Chicken Mobile. There's a guy who's driving an old yellow Cadillac with a big plastic chicken on the trunk. There's a best looking chicken contest. There's an egg dropping contest where you try to catch an egg without breaking it. They drop it out of a bucket truck. Of course, everybody gets sprayed with egg when it breaks. It's hilarious. There's a best beak contest, one of my favorite, best chicken beak on a person. Everybody sticks his or her nose through a hole in a piece of cardboard, and on the other side, there are judges to judge the best beak, right? There's a best drumstick contest, as I remember too, where people are sticking their legs out of a painting of a chicken or something. They feed you eggs in the morning, chicken for lunch, chicken for dinner. That's fine with me, I like chicken. That's me with the Chickendales, sorry. I'm not quite as big as them, but I'm working on it all the time. The whole thing about the Chicken Festival, it's visually loaded. I love things that are visually loaded. It happens at nice times of the day and it's visually loaded. When the sun is low on the horizon, how can you beat that? Are you getting this? If it happens at a nice time of the day and it's visually loaded, your odds go way up of making great pictures. Don't shoot the Chicken Festival in the middle of the day. Shoot the Chicken Festival when the light's nice. It's all good stuff, okay? Now, here's a big research job for you. Let's go even bigger than Alaska's North Slope. Let's go to Africa, the Albertine Rift, which is a big volcanic valley in Uganda in East Africa. This all started one day. I was riding my bike home from the grocery store with a gallon of milk. My editor, longtime editor, 20 years, Kathy Moran, called, said, "How would you like to go to Africa?" And I immediately said no, because they expect too much. They expect results. And there have been lots of great geographic photographers worked in Africa over the years. And I said, no. And she said, come on, Joel, there are lions that sleep in the trees there. That would make a really good picture, wouldn't it? And I was like, okay. So now until this phone call from my editor, about all I knew in Africa is that there are a lot of machine guns everywhere. This is my friend Charles Rash, a videographer with such a guy, a guard with a machine gun. I mean, that's about all I knew. Before I decided to take the job anyway, I started to write emails. And anybody, anywhere that I'd ever talked to that had worked in that part of the world, I called them. I contacted anybody who might know something about how to work over there. I exchanged emails with people that were with the Ugandan Wildlife Authority. and with veterinarians, anybody that knew about this stuff, anybody, constantly looking. And eventually, you know what? One day, about a month into my morning emails, I met this guy through email, a doctor, a veterinarian, German-born, named Lou Seifert, Dr. Ludwig Seifert. He proved to be a godsend. He'd been working out of one town called Moya in the middle of Queen Elizabeth National Park for 30 years. This guy was just absolutely fabulous. I wrote to him, and next thing I knew, he's the guy to hang out with. He had more than a dozen lions radio collared. He was doing a tracking study, more than anybody else. He had vehicles, and he was really desperate to tell the story of how the predators in Queen Elizabeth National Park were being poisoned by the cattlemen who were fighting to take over precious grazing land inside the park. Lou knew everybody there. He was well respected. He was the guy with the dart gun for tranquilizing lions. He was the center of the action. He was it. 2 vehicles. He said he'd help me rig my camera traps for other species too. Lou was what I like to call one-stop shopping. Man, I knew I could get just a ton of visuals if I went out with them, and these visuals would be representational of the Rift's wildlife and conservation issues just by hanging out with this one guy, because we could be led into so many other things. Always a good thing if you can find one-stop shopping. So no matter what I do, I'm looking for a person like Lou. Truly, if you can find one really talkative person, a friendly person that you hit it off with in each location you hope to shoot, your life will be a dream photographically, or at least visually loaded. I mean, true. We eventually found lions that were sleeping the day away in the trees. That was great. And it was ideal for us because they weren't going anywhere. They were just laying around and yawning and sleeping, and they'd stand up and stretch. Dr. Lou said they'd climb these trees to stay cool. So that's great. That made for a lot of great pictures, right? I'd worked with Dr. Lou quite a bit via emails and phone calls, and we had a really good rapport before I even got there. And right off the bat, we had a great shoot the whole time. I made sure that I shared pictures with him, obviously, before I came out. And just think of this. All these pictures came from research I'd done from my kitchen table back home at Lincoln, Nebraska. Can you believe that? I wrote 700 emails, by the way, in the course of researching this story, but man, it was worth it. It's totally worth it. You know, another thing to keep in mind, find out if you need special permission, permits, or paperwork to photograph in a particular situation. You know, the world's gotten a lot more uptight since 9/11. There's a lot more permitting being done in this part of the world. Now, for example, I had to photograph a couple of military things for my story on Nebraska. This was before 9/11, and even then it was tough. I wanted to go to their top secret war planning room at Offutt Air Force Base. It's now called Stratcom, this place. There's a big room on springs so that they can take the shock of a nuclear blast if one hits them. They would bounce up and down. It wouldn't destroy the room or the gear in the room. I wanted to see what this looked like. I wanted to see where World War III was going to be waged electronically. So I got permission to go down there as part of this Nebraska story, but it was quite amazing. Lots and lots of screens, believe it or not. Some of them tuned to CNN before I got there. I ended up photographing the PR guy that took me around. I wanted to make a picture beyond just the room, but I wanted a human element. I wanted something that spoke to the secretive nature of the place, so we kind of have this little bit of ghost lighting coming up from behind him. I ended up with this picture actually as the keeper. I didn't want to show his whole face. I wanted him to look more like, I don't know, he was top secret. If you look at the screens in the background, you can see all the non-classified pictures of nuclear delivery vehicles that we have in our country, bombers, submarines, land-based, that kind of thing. But you know, this ran in the magazine. Mainly, we're talking about something that filled the screen. It was kind of intriguing. It was a look that had not been seen before. And look at that, rule of thirds. We're trying to fill out the frame as much as we can. So when you're doing your research and prep, you have to be persistent. Sometimes you don't get permission. Sometimes it takes a long time. Homework equals access, though. I cannot stress that enough. If you want to do a really great job on something that's complicated, especially, do your homework and never give up. Let me tell you about a picture that I really like, but it took a long time to get. For a year, I tried to get permission to get on a refueling aircraft based out of Lincoln so I could photograph a B-2 stealth bomber over Nebraska. I knew that they refueled over the western end of the state, and it would be a great way to show a landscape of Nebraska in aerial and throw this great looking aircraft in the center of it. So to do this, I went back and forth between the National Guard wing that ran those planes and our local National Guard base in Lincoln, the one that provided the refueling tankers to fuel this thing right up in flight. I needed it to be late in the day or very early when the light was nice. I got the runaround, and I never gave up month after month. I finally got permission, and I got this frame. What happened, somebody felt sorry for me after a year of getting told no. They found that out, and they finally said I need to call Langley Air Force Base, based on the East Coast, because that's where they cut the orders. So I talked to their public affairs person out there, and you know what? Within a week, they called back and said, we need your social security number, we can get you on the next plane, and you can get your pictures. So it worked out, but I did not give up. I mean, I worked it and worked it and worked it. I bet you I had 50, 60 phone calls easy and emails over and over and over again, trying to figure out, what is it? What is it I have to do to get this picture? Because it happened all the time. I just needed permission to be there. But that's typical. If you want really good pictures, sometimes you have to be type A and driven. By the way, after this ran in the magazine, I got calls from the farmers who recognized their land down below, and they bought prints for Christmas. How about that? Another thing I like to say, prepare for the weather. Above it all, in every way I try to be prepared. I'm proud to say that I'm an Eagle Scout, and that's where I learned this. The Boy Scout motto certainly applies to photography, be prepared. If you're shooting something outside, be ready for bad weather. There's no excuse. Whether it's rainy or sunny, you're going to need specialized gear. That's sun hats, that's raincoats, that's good hiking boots, whatever it takes, rubber boots, I don't know. You need to know how to work in cold conditions. Wearing a hat actually keeps your hands warm, believe it or not, because you lose so much heat out of the crown of your head. So you wear a good hat and your gloves will work. Simple, but you have to experience it or be told that to know it, right? If it's sunny and hot, pack a broad-brimmed hat and sunscreen. Just be smart about how you go about it. Keep hydrated, that is huge. Be smart about how you carry yourself out in this big wide world of ours too. Before you go anywhere, learn about the crime potential there. Talk to people who have been there. Are there pickpockets? If so, then maybe you don't want to walk around so conspicuously, right? With all these valuable things hanging off of you. Dress appropriately so you'll fit in. Carry much less gear and forget about the big photo vest that says, I'm a walking ATM. Be smart about how you dress, smart about how you behave, and it will greatly improve your odds of having a very pleasant trip. Most of all though, bring backups of your most critical gear in case something bad happens to it. Believe me, you're gonna need it. Good pictures take work. From the research and prep time you spend in the field, I often say that the difference between a good picture and a great picture is the amount of time you put into it. That's it. It's a function of time. You can get a good picture with 90% of the effort maybe, but to get to a great picture, it usually doesn't take another 10%. It's usually another 90% more work to get a great picture. It really is key. And that's what separates your pictures that are great from everybody else's. You've put the time in on it. You've really hammered it. Persistence is really a key ingredient in getting great pictures. So once you've researched and gotten to a place, don't leave early. Get there early and stay late. The best frames for me usually happen at the end of the shoot, really. Once I've learned how my subject behaves, whether I'm in or not, whether there's a good vibe there, once I've seen how the light works, once I anticipate the dance that's going on, once I've got my picture and I'm sure about it, I'll put in another card and shoot that one too, just to make sure, because it's often on the very last card that's the best stuff. The best stuff of the whole shoot, right? Because you're problem solving the whole time. You're working through solutions. Your brain is helping you figure that out the whole time. Shoot again and again. When you think you're done, shoot some more. Push yourself. That's where the really great frames come in. Go beyond the obvious. Let's show you another illustration here of a time that I had to work in the United Kingdom. I worked the Three Peaks Challenge. This is a mountain climbing event that happens every year in the United Kingdom. It's a race for charity where various people run up and down the mountains. And again, when the Geographic called me to do this, I said no. I didn't want to go because I'm no mountain climber. I don't run anywhere but the fridge, really. So, I mean, run up and down mountains? I think not. But I did my research. The Geographic, my editor, Kathy Moran, called me down. I did my research. And I knew before I went that the guys I'd be partnered with, some guys from a fire station in England, they were very, very good guys. They were going to be very kind to me. They would slow up for me a little bit. I knew from talking to my editor and to the story writer that I would not have to race up and down the mountains, but I would be able to make good pictures. These guys were nice. They were excited to have me come in. They're all trained athletes. I'm a butterball. So are we kidding? But the research phase literally saved me and certainly eased my mind and convinced me that I should go and I should try to make the most out of it. So let's see what we do. Well, the first thing I did was get there early. Get there early and see these guys working out and try to make funny pictures of them working out. They have these pre-race rituals. They work out at the fire station on the day that they get ready to go, and they stop at an amusement park on the west coast of England, and they ride the kiddie rides just for fun and to try to loosen them up. So that's great. That's great. That's a good thing. Then they stop at the pub. I know I can make pictures in there of these guys drinking beer, and I had one or two as well, and then I wasn't quite as concerned about whether my pictures were going to get me fired or not. So I shot as best I could, and then we start getting into the mountains, and they get there a couple days early. I'm there with them, and we're working out. They're practicing, so it's a chance to try different things. Slow shutter speed of these guys moving around, maybe a 15th or 20th of a second here. Maybe it's a chance to try low angle, worm's eye view. Put the camera in the trail as these guys are running back down the end of the day and shoot with a motor drive with a little radio trigger, a little remote, and fire it bang, bang, bang as they're jumping over. Even got a boot getting ready to come down right in front. So I'm learning in all these cases, I can get a little bit ahead of them and get pictures of them coming up the mountain, and then when I'm extremely fatigued, I'll go back down and get them right when they're running back down the mountain. So I really didn't get to the tops very much, but I was able to make pictures. There are other people in this race too that would absolutely conk out on top of the rock. They just couldn't handle it. And so that's good pictures too. I'm looking for pictures anywhere I can get it. If it's a sheep that's lost and running alongside the road, we have to drive to 3 mountains and climb 3 mountains in 24 hours. So it is really a race and it takes its toll. That's a picture too. And I knew about all this stuff in general just from my research phase. I knew that these guys would be pretty beat up because they're going 24 hours straight and they were really rough in the van. I wasn't feeling too good either, but you know what? It's all right. It all makes pictures. The last mountain they finish up, the ultimate ace in the hole I had was they went to the top of Mount Snowdon in Wales. Now, obviously, this is a place anybody can get to. Here's some tourists that were there when we got there. Why? Because there's a train that goes to the top of the mountain. So I rode that train up there. This is my face before realizing, right, what I was in for. The train goes to the top. That's great. I can ride the train and beat the guys up there, can ride with the retirees, and that's fine. I was able to get up there way ahead of them before they turned around and came back down. And here we go on the way down. So I was able to hang out with them even on the last mountain. So I'd researched this well enough to know that I was really going to be able to make a story, all because of the research. Totally. There they run down the mountain with the little train. It's my kind of mountain climbing where you take the train to the top of the mountain. And that's the end of the day. Sleeping. Well, almost the end of the day. Of course, we had to hit the pub on the way out, right? If I had just gone there, by the way, and had not done all this research, think I would have gotten any pictures? I would have gotten a few. But you know what? That research phase helped bond me to them. It really helped make the story complete because I was friends with them before I got there. Plus, I would have been freaking out. I wanted to know that I'd make a nice set of pictures before I ever put myself on the airplane to go. Makes sense, right? So, one last story here. This is how you do something the wrong way, the hard way. I want to tell you about a time back when I worked at the Wichita Eagle in Kansas. I needed to go photograph a windmill repairman out on the Colorado plains. There's not much going on out there on the east side of the Rockies. It's windy and desolate. Not a whole lot of people live out there. It's very pretty to me, though. I called the postmistress out there to learn what goes on. I asked what people do. She said, you know, rural mail carriers come around out here, and there are people that grade the roads and cowboys moving cattle once in a while. And there's a windmill repairman that works out in this county. I said, windmill repairman, that sounds good. All right, so I'll try that. So I got the repairman's name and phone number. I called him up and I asked, you know, when's he doing his work? And he says, I work from dawn till dusk. This is a busy time of the year, summertime. So I knew I could get pictures in the right light. I asked if he had a boom truck, one that gets him up to the windmill head and takes those heads off those windmills. He said, sure. I said, can I climb the boom? He says, sure, but you're going to get greasy and oily, wear old clothes. So that's great. So I go all the way out there and I climb up to the top, right across from him. That's fantastic. Old windmill out on the Colorado plains. I'm all set. He's getting ready to go. Sun's just getting ready to come up. And he goes, whoa, what are you doing? What are you doing? He's up on the windmill, getting ready to go, getting ready to work on it. I can see the picture coming together right in front of me. And I'm saying, well, I'm getting ready to take pictures. He says, no, 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 no. You never asked me that. I'm wanted. You can't take any pictures of me, sorry. Well, I'd driven 6 or 7 hours out there, but he was right. I never did in my research phase go all the way through and ask if I could take his picture. I just asked if I could take pictures of the windmill. So you know what I do now? I ask if I can take the picture of the person that I'm talking to. It's a basic thing, but all it takes is a 6 or 7 hour drive one way and getting skunked that teaches you that lesson. So it's a basic stupid question, but it's not a stupid question if somebody's wanted and you can't take their picture. So always ask permission, be nice about it, smile, be specific about it. Be very specific, or you'll find yourself moping all the way back home without a picture. I did go out there again. I found a different guy, one that was not wanted. We got a nice picture, but what a lesson. I eventually did get him and it worked out great, but you know, did it the hard way, totally. So our next assignment, I want you to take pictures that require special timing or special access to get to, something you have to work a little bit for. This could be for behind the scenes access at a concert or a ballet performance or a play, or get to a building's rooftop to shoot overviews of a downtown main street. This is the fun stuff, you guys. You'll be really glad you did. So next up, in our next lecture, a little change of gears in that we turn our attention to the least among us, the small things, and how we can photograph them. I mean physically small, using macro equipment. It is a lot of fun, so we will see you then.